The gates slammed shut, severing the skin on my fingertips. "Get out, you broken, useless trash," my husband Ethan Choi screamed, shoving me face first into the freezing asphalt. The impact cracked my collarbone, a sharp, blinding agony bursting behind my eyes. I scrambled on my hands and knees, clutching at the hem of his pristine coat. "Ethan, please. 7 years. I gave you everything." He didn't even look down. He just spat directly into my face and left. Before I could process the betrayal, the mansion's heavy garage doors rolled up. A second luxury car pulled out, its tinted window sliding down to reveal Ethan's mother, Leonora, the cold-blooded matriarch of Choi Industries. She tossed a wet medical file into the puddle right next to my bleeding hands. "You actually thought you were the barren one, Sasha? You're perfectly fertile. My son is the one who can't reproduce. But the Choi bloodline cannot be labeled weak on the high society boards. So we forged your medical files to legally strip you of your family's multi-million-dollar inheritance. And look who is replacing you." Beside her in the back seat sat my own younger sister, smiling like a venomous viper, her hand resting over a fake prosthetic pregnancy bump they were going to use to fool the public and secure the board's voting blocks. They had orchestrated my entire life's ruin from day one. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone, we will make sure you are blacklisted from every industry globally, penniless and starving," Ethan whispered, kicking my hand away before their limousines roared away into the night. I lay there gasping for air, the taste of metallic blood and cold rainwater filling my mouth. The despair was overwhelming, threatening to make me close my eyes and just let the financial and emotional ruin consume me. No, I refused to curl up and die. Suddenly, the deafening roar of a modified V8 engine tore through the quiet street. Blinding high beams pinned me to the pavement. A heavy, armored black sedan screeched to a halt, its bumper stopping mere inches from my crushed chest. The door swung open, and a man stepped out into the downpour, completely unfazed by the howling wind. It was Damian Lee, the feared, shadowy kingpin of Blackwater Harbor's underground financial syndicate, a man who controlled the shadow banks and corporate debt lines that kept the city's elite alive. He looked down at my bleeding form, his dark eyes completely devoid of pity, yet burning with an intense, lethal focus. He knelt right in the mud, ignoring his expensive suit. "Sasha." His voice was a low, commanding growl that vibrated through my bones. "You have two choices right now. You can freeze to death in this gutter, or you can stand up and liquidate their entire empire." I choked on my tears, staring at his outstretched hand. "Why do you care? I have nothing left. They took my family's funds, my credit, my name, everything." Damian's grip tightened on his leather glove. "They took your inheritance, but they also launched a predatory corporate raid on my primary shipping logistics front tonight. We share the same enemies. Come home with me. I will give you an untouchable financial kingdom, and in return, you will use your intimate knowledge of the Choi accounts to burn their corporate structure to the ground." My heart hammered wildly against my ribs. The physical pain vanished, replaced by an intoxicating, white-hot rage. This was a deadly bargain with the mastermind of the underbelly, but the legitimate world had already abandoned me. I reached out and gripped his glove. He pulled me up in one swift, effortless motion, hauling my shivering body against his chest. "From this moment on, you are no longer a victim," Damian whispered, throwing his heavy wool coat over my shoulders. "You are my wife, and the market always bows to the Mafia." Before we dive deeper into the ruthless world of corporate warfare and shadow banking, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you do not want to miss the absolute financial chaos Sasha is about to unleash on her former in-laws. He opened the passenger door, shielding me from the storm as I climbed in. As the car tore down the dark highway toward the city center, a heavy silence filled the cabin. Before the quiet could settle into exhaustion, Damian's encrypted tablet buzzed violently on the dashboard. He answered the secure audio line. Ethan's arrogant voice boomed through the speakers. "Lee, our market analysts say your shell companies are buying up Choi stock. If that trash, Sasha, is feeding you insider information, drop her in the river, or we execute a forced margin call on your Easter logistics account by dawn." Damian didn't even blink. He leaned over, looked directly into my eyes, and spoke calmly into the receiver. "Ethan, look at your real-time terminal trading desk in exactly 3 seconds." I watched Damian tap a single command on his screen, releasing a massive, coordinated short-selling attack on the Choi public stock. A frantic alert tone chimed on Ethan's end. "What did you do?" Ethan screamed as his company's valuation plummeted by $400 million in seconds. Damian hung up without another word. "That was just their morning liquidity," he said coldly. "Welcome to the family, Sasha." 3 days later, the bruising on my collarbone was hidden beneath a tailored, midnight blue sil power suit that cost more than my entire 7-year marriage allowance. Damian stood behind me in the glass penthouse, fastening a diamond choker around my neck. It felt like armor for the upcoming financial bloodbath. "Tonight is the grand Blackwater Gala," he murmured against my ear, his hands resting heavily on my shoulders. "The Choice believe they own the board of directors. Go show them who actually dictates the market." When we walked into the grand ballroom of the financial district, the classical music abruptly stopped. Hundreds of hedge fund managers, politicians, and CEOs locked their eyes onto us. I held my chin high, my posture rigid and cold, radiating a commanding corporate confidence. Ethan was standing by the champagne fountain, bragging to a group of offshore investors. But when he saw me walking arm in arm with Damian Lee, his glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Sasha," he gasped, rushing forward, his face twisting into an ugly scowl. "What kind of sick joke is this? You're supposed to be bankrupt and blacklisted. Security, remove this woman. She has no credentials to be here." Damian stepped in front of me, his gaze so terrifyingly cold that Ethan actually took a step back. "Watch your tone, Choi. You are speaking to the majority proxy holder of your own primary commercial lending bank." Ethan let out a forced, hysterical laugh. "Majority proxy? You married this broke, Barren charity case to scare me? She brings no capital to the table." I stepped out from beneath Damian's shadow, looking Ethan dead in the eye. "I brought a whole new corporate charter, Ethan," I said, my voice echoing clearly across the silent ballroom. "And as for assets, everyone here should refresh their financial news feeds right now." I pulled out my phone and authorized the release of our primary leverage play. Instantly, every tablet and smartphone in the room chirped with a breaking financial news alert. It wasn't an anonymous leak. It was an ironclad corporate disclosure. The files contained a certified, unedited medical records proving Ethan's infertility alongside the audited bank tracking numbers, showing exactly how the Choice had illegally wire transfer my family's stolen multi-million-dollar inheritance to artificial shell companies to inflate their quarterly earnings reports. "You manipulative bitch," Leonora shrieked, pushing through the crowd of horrified investors, her face pale as she stared at the rapidly dropping stock ticker on her wrist. "This is proprietary data. You've tanked our credit rating. Security, detain them for industrial espionage." 6 of the building's private security personnel moved to surround us, blocking the exits. But before they could even step forward, the doors of the ballroom burst open. Dozens of federal financial regulators and white-collar crime investigators flooded the room. "Ethan Choi, Leonora Choi, you are served with an immediate asset freeze and federal indictment for securities fraud, forgery, and grand larceny," the lead investigator bellowed. Ethan lunged toward me in a desperate rage, but Damian stepped forward, checking him with a cold, immovable stance that forced Ethan to the floor. "I told you, Damian whispered as the crowd began whispering in panic. Nobody touches my wife's balance sheet. If your jaw just dropped at that corporate takedown, smash that like button right now and leave a comment predicting how the choice will try to manipulate the market to fight back. The feds escorted the trembling Choice out for questioning, but the true corporate war was just beginning. Leonora still possessed a hidden safety net, a shadow cartel of predatory lenders who wouldn't let their financial puppet be destroyed so easily. That same night, Damian rushed me to our secure financial command center, a heavily fortified penthouse suite equipped with isolated, high-frequency trading servers. We stay completely off the public grid until the asset liquidation is finalized, Damian said, booting up the encrypted terminals. I sat before the massive array of market monitors, my pulse racing. Can they breach our financial firewall, Damian? I asked. He looked at me, a rare, soft expression breaking through his hardened features. With my security protocols, your data is impenetrable, Sasha. I will protect your position with everything I own. Suddenly, a flashing crimson alert pulsed across our primary trading terminal. Our master portfolio was hemorrhaging capital at an impossible rate. Damian, look at the short positions. Someone is counterbuying our entire debt leverage. I shouted, typing frantically to trace the origin of the sudden multi-billion-dollar capital surge. The main trading monitors suddenly locked down, displaying a single user access override. The internal communication screen flickered to life, revealing Eric, Damian's trusted chief financial officer and asset manager, sitting in a rival trading firm across town. He held a signed corporate waiver, a smug, greedy grin plastered across his face. Sorry, boss. Eric sneered through the video feed. The Choi cartel partners offer me a $50 million partnership and a seat on the new board if I executed a backdoor margin call on your shell companies. I just leaked your entire private ledger and offshore account routing numbers to their attorneys. By the time the markets open in Tokyo, Lee Holdings will be completely bankrupt, and Sasha will be right back in the gutter where she belongs. Damian's eyes darkened with a lethal intensity as he stared at the trader on screen. You sold out our entire infrastructure, Eric. There is no recovery from insider trading of this scale. Eric laughed loudly. It's not illegal if the new regulators are in our pocket, Damian. You're done. Enjoy total financial insolvency. We had minutes before the automated margin calls triggered, which would instantly liquidate all of Damian's assets and leave us completely defenseless. Damian began trying to manually reroute the capital, but the firewalls Eric put up were too complex. I had to use absolute business intelligence to survive. I dove into the Choi corporate bylaws that I had memorized during my 7 years of psychological isolation in that house. I searched for the one fatal structural flaw Leonora had hidden in their family trust charter. Damian, stop trying to block Eric's trades. I commanded, my fingers flying across my secondary keyboard. We don't need to save our accounts. We need to cross-default theirs. Sasha, what are you looking at? Damian asked, pausing as he watched me pull up the master trust documents of Choi Industries. Leonora structured their family trust so that any federal investigation into the primary beneficiaries automatically triggers a mandatory, immediate liquidation of all tied corporate assets to protect the bondholders. I explained, a cold smile forming on my face. Eric thinks he's using the Choi cartel money to squeeze us, but that cartel money is directly backed by the Choi family trust bonds. I locked eyes with Eric on the screen. Eric, look at your terminal. I just filed an emergency cross-default motion with the Central Clearing Bank using the federal indictment from tonight. The clearinghouse just flagged your entire $50 million buyout as toxic, unbacked debt. Eric's smile completely vanished. His eyes widened in absolute horror as his monitors began flashing with automated liquidation notices. No, wait. That's impossible. You can't access that trust protocol. I was the corporate secretary for 7 years, Eric. I know every single loophole your lawyers wrote, I said, hitting the final execution key. The clearing bank is executing a forced buy-in of your positions to cover the Choi default. You aren't getting $50 million. You are currently personally liable for the entire $400 million deficit. On the screen, we watched in real time as Eric's systems crashed, his trading license revoked instantly by the Automated Exchange Authority. He collapsed back in his chair, completely ruined, staring at a negative balance sheet he could never pay off in 10 lifetimes. I disconnected the feed, leaving him in total financial darkness. Damian looked at me, his face filled with an intense, burning reverence. You didn't just save my holdings, he whispered, pulling me into a fierce, breathless embrace. You completely rewritten the rules of the game. 3 days later, the corporate trap was fully finalized. Leonora Choi had used her final hidden reserves to post a massive corporate bail, hiding out in their high-rise headquarters before the federal marshals could officially seize the physical real estate. She thought she could still restructure her debt through a bankruptcy loophole. She was entirely wrong. Damian and I walked into her top-floor executive boardroom completely unannounced. Our new corporate security team already controlled the electronic turnstiles downstairs. Leonora sat at the head of her massive mahogany conference table, looking exhausted but still possessing that venomous glare. You think you've won this hostile takeover, she hissed, sliding a signed paper asset transfer toward us. The cartel still holds the primary mortgage liens on this entire corporate tower and all our patents. If you try to evict us, we will execute a scorched earth restructuring plan that will tie up these assets in court for the next 30 years. I will tie up every dime you have before I let a foreign stray like you run this company. I didn't let her dramatic threat slow down the momentum for a second. Instead, I calmly walked to the head of the table, pulled out the chair directly opposite her, and sat down, looking at her with cold amusement. Execute the plan, Leonora. I dared her, my voice completely deadpan. She hesitated, her pen trembling over the secondary filing documents. You're bluffing. You need these patents to keep Lee Holdings liquid. I don't need a bluff, I replied, turning a digital tablet toward her and sliding it across the polished wood. Take a close look at the lender's signature page. The tablet displayed the certified registry from the central bank archives, updated less than an hour ago. Damian, I didn't try to fight your mortgage liens in court, Leonora. We spent the last 48 hours buying out the distressed debt of the very cartel that lent you that money. We are no longer your competitors, trying to take your board seats. Lee Holdings is now your primary senior secured creditor. You don't have 30 days to file for restructuring. You are in immediate default, and I am foreclosing on this entire building, your patents, and your personal residences by noon today. Leonora's jaw dropped. The pen slipped from her weak fingers, clattering onto the table. She looked at me, her eyes filled with the absolute terror of a fallen dictator. You're a monster, she whispered, realizing she was entirely wiped out from the economic landscape. No, I said, leaning forward so she could see the cold determination in my eyes. I am the business partner you discarded, and this is my market now. Within minutes, the federal marshals arrived to escort her out of the building, stripping her of the empire she had used to humiliate me for 7 years. Don't skip the final chapter of Sasha's ultimate triumph. If you want to see how she transforms her massive corporate victory into global empowerment, share this story with 3 friends right now, and let's hit our goals for this page. 5 years later, the Choi name was completely erased from the financial district, replaced by a monument of true structural change. Standing on the stage of a grand, newly constructed glass and steel headquarters in the heart of the city, I looked out at an audience of hundreds of brilliant women from all over the world. Above the auditorium, bold silver letters read, "The Phoenix Anchor Foundation, using the billions of dollars liquidated from the Choi corporate estate alongside the legitimate highly profitable international logistics networks of Lee Holdings. I had established the world's largest venture capital and legal defense fund, specifically designed to provide financial independence, corporate training, and top-tier legal protection to foreign spouses facing isolation, domestic abuse, or systemic marginalization. I was no longer a defenseless outcast. I was their primary investor. After the inaugural gala speech, I walked out onto the private terrace overlooking the breathtaking, neon-lit horizon of Blackwater Harbor. The cool night breeze caught my hair, but the old fear was entirely gone. A pair of strong, reassuring arms wrapped around my waist from behind, pulling me back against a warm, familiar chest. Damian rested his chin on my shoulder, looking out at the glittering financial capital we now dominated together. "You completely transformed the market tonight, Sasha," he murmured, his voice rich with quiet pride. I turned around in his embrace, wrapping my arms around his neck, looking into the dark, brilliant eyes of the man who had bet everything on my intellect. "We transformed it, Damian," I corrected him, pressing my lips against his. Our partnership wasn't a fragile fairy tale born of convenience. It was a fierce, unbreakable corporate alliance forged in the crucible of betrayal, business intelligence, and absolute strategic domination. We had mastered the system, and together, we were completely untouchable.